We can maybe start by dismantling some of these claims, let's say the ethical, the environmental, the nutritional claims that we see from, it seems like more and more government agencies, which I think we can get to as well, around reducing meat consumption.
Yes. And in the beginning of our book, Sacred Cow, so for anyone who's maybe saw us on Joe Rogan, we got a lot of hits for the film. The films are easy to watch, hour, 20 minutes. It definitely does cover like the big ideas, but the book really dives into things. So for anyone who's maybe seen the film and didn't pick up the book, I highly recommend you do. We have a like choose your own adventure section at the beginning, like does meat cause cancer, page 72, so you can kind of go through all, we started by just listing out all of the claims against meat and then how do we attack them in the most logical way. And so, I mean, really, people are uncomfortable with the idea of death and animal suffering. That's like what it comes down to. They're unfamiliar with food production. They want to just feel okay. And they don't have the time to go through all of the research, and all of the media and pretty much all the influencers out there are telling them that these plant-based alternatives are better. So it just sounds easy, and meat has really become the ultimate scapegoat for our failing health, the warming planet, and your moral dilemmas around yourself and death and the fear of death. So we talk in the beginning of the book, we have a chapter called Meat as Scapegoat. And we really talk about how did it even get to this point and why, like you said, our governments all of a sudden trying to reduce carbon emissions, and that means reducing livestock or changing how, what is that all from?
I think, was it Sweden? I forget which country. They've banned meat ads starting in 23. The Netherlands, Amsterdam. Yes. They have banned meat ads starting in 23, which is preposterous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And I actually, I am cooking up a plan to actually push back against that, which may include a full page ad in the New York Times that's run by my nonprofit that I started. So I have a group called the Global Food Justice Alliance, and our main mission is to make sure that people who want access to nutrient dense animal source foods have access to it. We really push back against things like vegan Fridays in the New York City public schools, and all these other policies that are pulling meat and livestock away from people who would really benefit from it, like every human on the planet. So that's the mission of that organization. It's not industry funded, and I'm the executive director, and I have been flying all over the world this past year: Brazil, the UK, New Zealand, Australia. I'll be going to Ireland soon. I may even be attending the UN climate change talks. I was just invited to do a talk there. So I'm just sort of debating, like, is it worth this gigantic flight to go to Egypt? But I could be influencing a lot of people. Should I get a bigger
life insurance policy?
Yeah. But what I'm seeing around the world are these knee-jerk policies to reduce carbon emissions at any cost by people who have no idea that the methane emitted from cattle is part of a biogenic cycle and should be viewed very differently than fossil fuels, which are injecting brand new greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So, I do tend to reserve the ethics dilemma to the end and we did that in the book for a reason, because you can't talk about whether or not it's okay to raise a beautiful cow, to kill it, without fully appreciating the nutritional value that animal source foods have to humans, and without understanding the environmental impact and benefits that grazing animals have, and what are the unintended consequences of not eating meat and not having livestock. And so you have to weigh all of that in. You can't just have this philosophical debate about what is sentience and what is life without understanding like the harms that it can do, permanent brain damage to children from B12 deficiencies, iron deficiency causing
isn't it illegal? I think it's illegal in most places to raise a vegan child. Like, they're going to have cognitive deficits, they're going to have stunted growth, IQ issues.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on a panel one time down in Virginia with a bunch of libertarians, and we were talking about, is it okay to raise a kid on a vegan diet, or should there be some kind of, I was trying to argue as a health practitioner and mother and dietitian, someone concerned about nutrition, that there should be some kind of policy that when a child is being raised on a vegan diet, that the pediatrician is flagged and they agree to bring that child in more frequently for health checkups, for weight and height checkups, and that these parents agree to receive information on how to potentially optimize that, and also for warning signals so that they, can start introducing animal source foods if they start to see any delays, and they sort of like sign off on something. And it was funny because some of the folks on the panel were like, but that's the community's job, or, what about the standard American diet? You could say the same thing. But the fact is, we don't have communities really anymore that's like intervening in situations like this. And it is very different than a standard American diet. Like, even if you're eating McDonald's and, Chick-fil-A, you're still getting animal source protein. It's not ideal to be eating it in the fast food form, but you're still getting iron and B12 and a lot of nutrients that you absolutely cannot get from from plant source foods. And so I do really feel pretty strongly that it is unethical for parents to be depriving their children of nutrition. Like, I don't care what people do for themselves as adults, but when it comes to kids, it's really important. I mean, I was malnourished as a child, and that's how I got into becoming a dietitian. I had undiagnosed celiac disease, and had low muscle tone and some learning disabilities that were all resolved once I actually started absorbing the food that I was eating. And so I'm really quite passionate about kids being able to access and absorb the right nutrients that they need in order to just give them, a baseline footing in the world.